Hello everyone, this is Ellie and I'm glad you're here. In this video I'm showing you how I redid one of my most recent vivariums and I really love the way that it turned out. I did this because I really wanted to try creating a rainforest scene that almost looked miniature, like you're looking in on a large area but shrunken down. So I was inspired by a picture of like a waterfall, and it had a canopy, and so I wanted to try to do that, and I also wanted to try to make something that kind of looked like a bonsai tree without actually having to get into bonsais, but I wanted it to still be real. So that's kind of where the inspiration came from. And right here I'm using an old like Exoterra or whatever brand foam background that comes with a lot of vivariums, and I decided I didn't want to use it anymore, so I cut it up and I'm using it to create a skeleton that I'm going to spray foam over to get the shape that I want. So this is just going to be one side of the vivarium wall, so I'm using mostly hot glue. It's not super sturdy, but it doesn't need to be. And now I'm covering it with wax paper. I wasn't sure if this was going to work, but it ended up really not sticking to the foam that I sprayed on, so it worked pretty well, and I was able to just pull that structure right out after the foam had hardened. And here we go with the foam. After the foam completely hardened, I went in with my drill and wire wheel drill bit and shaved off the top part just to make it look more smooth and rock-like, and this took quite a while. In retrospect, I should have worn a mask, so if you're going to do this, you should wear a mask if the dust is getting everywhere. And I used silicone and a little bit of hot glue to attach that piece to the side, and I ended up going back in with silicone again to fill in any gaps. And here I am just seeing the tree, which I'll show later, making sure that I'm leaving enough space for it. And I'm using more pieces from that foam background to kind of provide for some shape, and I went over it with Great Stuff foam. And then I'm using my regular drill again, and then I started using this Dremel tool that I got, and it worked really well for more detailed carving. And I'm also using just a smaller wire wheel drill bit there. Now I'm preparing the paint with Drylock colored with Quikrete cement coloring in the charcoal color. Mixed it up and went ahead and started painting. After it had dried overnight, I went back over and filled in any gaps, since I've noticed that once you paint over it once, it usually settles and some cracks may form, or the foam changes or something, and you have new things to fill in. So always leave time to repaint if necessary. And here I am trying to create my tree. I used 2 larger sticks as the base, and then broke off some smaller branches. And I connected these 2 by drilling a hole through them and getting a piece of gardening wire and putting the wire through the hole, and then super gluing the wire in there, and that stayed pretty sturdy. So that ended up working pretty well. Then I started gluing in the smaller branches, and I just used super glue for this. If you can't tell, I really like super glue. It's safe and it doesn't take very long, especially if you use water to set it. Here I am using the Dremel tool with a sanding bit just to take down any of those harsh lines that was created by like the glue or adding the sticks in, and then also at the ends of the larger branches, since it was a little bit blunt, so I went in and shaved those down. And here I am painting it. So I also used dry lock and some regular acrylic paint, as well as the charcoal cement coloring, just to provide a few coats. And the base color ended up coming out pretty gray, which I actually really like. I still think it looks realistic and pretty. And then I went back in with a light brown to give it some texture. Now I'm ready to start working on the canopy. So I measured out about how tall I wanted my canopy to be, and I used a little mini saw to create a bunch of my tree trunks. And I sanded down the bottoms to make them flat using my Dremel tool, and then assembled them using mostly hot glue, and then I went back over with some super glue and some wood glue to keep it in place. Here's the moss that I used. I really like this moss because it has the tiniest little leaves, and it really gave the canopy an appearance of trees from far away. So I started out with the moss. I did one bigger piece in the middle and then added smaller pieces along the branches, trying to keep in mind the way that trees naturally grow. I decided to add a few stones to the background, and I ordered these off of Amazon. I really liked them. They are natural slate, and I got 5 pounds for around $20. So since I used silicone to attach the stones, I painted over the silicone with some more Drylock. And then here I am attaching the tree, which ended up being a whole ordeal. Next time I will definitely add more support to the bottom. So I used silicone to attach the bottom of my canopy tree trunks to its little platform. And here I am fixing the tubing for the pump. I needed it to be a little longer, so I used a little T connector piece, and I siliconed the third piece so water wouldn't come out of it. And hot glue has been really good with keeping these together, and it even softens the tube a little bit so I can push the tube further into the piece. I'm threading this up so that it can go to the top of the waterfall. This is the plant I'm using as the leaves for the tree, and I did add a little bit of moss on the tree off camera because my SD card was full and I didn't want to wait. And I added the Rica, but I figured that wasn't super exciting. So I'm adding the leaves to the tree, and I tried as much as possible to allow some of the plant to be along the moss so that it could really sink its roots into something, but it wasn't super necessary since I know that this vivarium is going to have a lot of humidity, and usually the plants can just create their roots right on the piece of wood. I actually don't know what this plant is called. I had someone who is local to me who keeps dart frogs, and he did a vivarium trim and just gave me a bunch of plants for free, which was super nice, and that was one of them, and I just don't know what it is. So I'm using super glue as usual to attach the moss, and I wanted that little clearing on the left to almost look like grass, so I used a moss that was very grassy, and then for the rest I just used really whatever moss I had. And here's more of the slate on the bottom to allow for draining, and this is Selaginella something. Common name is Rainbow. I really like this plant. I actually got it recently. And here we go with some Hoya Caudata Sumatra. This was in my last vivarium, so it might look a little bit familiar if you saw that video. I'm using moss to cover the power cord for the pump. And this is Rhaphidophora Hoya, which is a shingling plant, and it's just a little dude, so I stuck it in some moss. And this is Resurrection Fern. It's really cool. When it gets dry, it'll crinkle up, but then once it gets water again, it unfurls and comes back to life. And I actually found this outside growing on a tree. There's a little bit of Philodendron Costa Rica, super cute, and Marcgravia Copper. I also threw in a little bit of string of turtles in there. So this is another attempt to support the tree. I'm adding in some roots and gluing that to the trunk to see if that'll help hold it up. And it helped a little bit, but it still wasn't enough. And here is some landscaping fabric that I'm using to separate the Rica from the leaf litter. So this is my final solution for the tree. I used some floral pins and I put it right into the foam, and I used, it's like fishing line but it's more crafty, some clear cord, and wrapped it around the trunk and then tied it through the pins in the foam, and that finally held up the tree enough. And here's the final product. I really love the way this turned out. I think it looks miniature, and I love the tall waterfall. I like watching the water go down and interact with all the rocks that I put through there. And I'm excited to see how the canopy really starts growing and see what happens with that. As far as the tree goes, I'm really glad I didn't have to get into bonsais because that seems like a lot of work, but I was able to make something that's still alive and will grow and look real, but also looks like a tree, but it's not a tree. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe so I can get a movie editing software that is not iMovie. Let me tell you, the struggle is real right now. But thank you for those who are subscribed. It's been really fun to see that number grow, and it truly is so exciting. So thank y'all for being here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.